All right. Now let us say hello to the man who will be in Dustin Poirier's corner this Saturday at UFC 257 as Dustin goes up against Conor McGregor in the highly anticipated main event. He's one of the very best coaches in the entire sport of mixed martial arts. You know him, the former WEC featherweight champion, head coach for not only Dustin Poirier, but a litany of great fighters from the American Top Team in Coconut Creek, Florida. He's the one and only Mike Brown joining us from Abu Dhabi. Mike, how are you?
I'm great. Good to see you again, Ariel.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you, Mike. I really appreciate it. Congratulations, by the way, on a great 2020 for you and the team. And you ended it, by the way, before we talk about Dustin, I do want to mention you ended it on a very high note with Kyoji Horiguchi coming back. I know how close you guys are, and I want to give you props. From my understanding, you had to be in like a strict quarantine for 14 days in Japan to be in his corner for that fight, right? On December 31st?
Yeah. It was pretty. It was long and boring. You know, a lot of Netflix.
How tough, like mentally, how tough? I haven't done the 14-day thing yet in the hotel. And those Japanese hotel rooms aren't all that big. How tough was that for you mentally?
I was in it wasn't even a proper hotel room. I'm in like a really tiny room with, real small. No fitness center. I didn't even have proper internet. I was connected to a telephone to use my internet, like tethered to
Wow.
a telephone. It was. But I mean, I'm chilling in a room. I'm watching Netflix, waiting, waiting for the fight. Not too bad. I could be doing worse things, and I would have done it 2 months for that result.
Wow. And you could get Netflix hooked up to a phone?
Yeah, in Japan they have Netflix.
No, I didn't know if the connection was
Oh
strong
no,
enough.
no, it was slow, but it would. Yeah, I would get the. It would stream.
Okay, wow. That's amazing. And by the way, just curious, I know you've been to some of those Japanese shows New Year's Eve. What a great scene that was. How would you compare this year's to the ones in the past, considering everything going on?
I mean, it was awesome. It was great. I think it was half capacity, and the place held like 26,000. So there was like 12,000 people there. It was big. It was great. A beautiful show, and the
Okay.
and the fights were super entertaining. I don't know if you saw the show, but it was really
Yep.
good.
Yeah, it was really good. And congrats on Kyoji's big win as well. I know how disappointed you were that you couldn't go to the first Fight Island, week and not be there for Jorge Masvidal, right? And now here you get to right that wrong with Dustin. Just curious because we haven't talked, formally. How much did that eat you up inside? The story was that he was on his way and then you
Yeah.
tested positive, unfortunately, and then you couldn't travel with Jorge to fight Kamaru. Considering your relationship and how you've been there with him through this amazing journey, the fact that you couldn't be there for the title fight, how difficult was
I mean,
that?
just heartbroken. I mean, it's so. It's the pinnacle of the sport. It's the biggest fight. At one of the most competitive weight classes. It's. I mean, really, there can't be much bigger in the sport than that. And yeah, I was heartbroken to not be there for George, but uh, we'll get there again, and I'll be there for the next one.
By the way, were you coaching him via FaceTime back then?
We tried it. Like I was Abe put me on like FaceTime or Skype or something. I don't even remember which one, but it was the video I was watching. I was trying to watch the feed, and I was like 30 seconds behind, so I couldn't really see what was going on. Maybe 20 seconds, but
Okay.
by the time I saw what had happened, we were way past that. So
Gotcha.
it really did no good.
Well, the good news is for this fight against Connor, you can be there in person for Dustin. And I actually want to start. Do you recall the first fight that you were ever in Dustin's corner for? Was it the first Connor fight or was it one before that?
No, it was Jonathan Brookins. So
Okay. So a
uh,
little bit before.
yeah, probably 4 or 5 before. I don't know.
Okay. Well, who the guy back in 2014 UFC 178? How would you describe that Dustin Poirier? Who was he?
I mean, he raw talent, man, raw talent. I mean, obviously he had skills, but he's been refining them year after year. Every week, every month, every year, every fight, every camp. He gets dramatically better. I mean, of course, it's cliche, but it's really true. Especially the losses, man. Every loss is you learn so much, and you make the big major changes usually after a loss. That's when you really see analyze what's going on and try to fix uh, whatever the problem might be. You really try to find the holes.
I know it was a long time ago, and you've been through many fights, many fight camps, many post-fight celebrations, and moments where fighters are down. But do you remember how he handled that loss? Do you remember anything about that night and the aftermath and how it affected him?
I mean, he was bummed out from losing. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, if my memory serves me right, it was. I'm sure he was, heartbroken. But I mean, they're all heartbreaking. Every one you take so personally. It's not easy. And I don't know if specifically that one was any worse than another. That they all hurt pretty bad. They all leave a scar. It's not a pleasant feeling. Any of them.
What would you say is the biggest, and maybe there's more than one difference between that guy and the guy who's preparing to fight on Saturday?
I mean, it's always changing. And I mean, technically he's getting better all the time, of course, right? But there's been many changes. I think that after that one, there was a major change in getting rid of the dramatic weight cuts. He was killing himself to make the weight at that time. I mean, it was months of work to make the weight. It's the counting out the how many nuts he can eat, and fasting and running and not eating. I mean, severe calorie deprivation and training on that, just not good for you. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for development. Um, but I remember specifically he was ranked really high, and he didn't want to have to start over at a new weight class. I remember, this was the conversation a lot of times. Um, and then I think after the loss, I think that kind of freed things up for him a little bit, where maybe he felt like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll give it a try, because he really shouldn't have been at that weight. He was too big, and he was killing himself to make it. I think it was hurting his performance. Um, and then that was a major decision that he changed to go up to 55. And I think it was obviously the right move. And I think he was happier, healthier, obviously a lot more durable. And he went on another win streak. And then I think we got to we knocked some guys out. I remember maybe 3, 4, and then he got to the Johnson fight, Michael Johnson, and that was another setback. And that was another big change. And obviously all the way along he's improving technically. In every fight, he's always learning new techniques, sharing ideas with coaches, other fighters, putting new tools, new weapons into the game. But then after that, the Michael Johnson fight, it was the realization of, you don't have to go out there and try to kill everybody in a minute or 2 minutes, which he does very well. He can go out there and try to just destroy the guy in a minute or two, and it works a lot. It'll work 4 out of 5 times, something like this. But his conditioning is some of the best I've ever seen. That's one of his greatest attributes. It's like, why do you go out there and just try to destroy the guy, immediately? You don't need to do that, man. Use your skill, slow things down, set things up, and be a little safer, and use technique, and take your time and pick these guys apart, and let the fight play out. And now we'll increase our odds from, instead of 4 out of 5, we win 9 out of 10, 19 out of 20, or perfect 10 out of 10, And I think that's what was the big shift after that. And he's really been, rock solid at that point. That's when he really started, beating champion after champion after champion on that really big streak.
So it's clear that he has improved dramatically since that first fight. Would you say that Conor has improved just as much, or do you think that Dustin is a vastly different fighter than the one, more so than the Conor McGregor that we'll see on Saturday?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know Conor on a personal level and know the details as well
But just
as
from what
I
you see
wouldn't.
in his fights since
Yeah,
then.
I mean, I think he's improved a lot. You know, I think his game has changed. I think he's added a lot of different weapons. Um, but we know a lot more about Conor now than we did then. You know,
Mm.
this was for me at that time. This was on his ascent up, and there was a lot of question marks to be asked. You know, a lot of things we didn't know about Conor at that time. You know, at that time, I think Dustin was by far the best guy he had ever fought. It was like a really big test for him. Um, and he obviously he did great. He passed the test. He looked great in the fight, but we didn't know a lot of things. Since then, we've learned a lot. We've seen a lot more fights. We've seen him in against higher level competition many times, and we've got to see how he performs against that high level competition. And obviously, we see strengths, we see weaknesses, and that's what we work to try to exploit those.
One of the narratives in the aftermath of the first fight was that perhaps, and this is what was said, and it's impossible to really know unless Dustin comes out and says it himself. And he has talked about it, how mentally the build up, the pressure he put on himself, he was going to be the guy to stop the Conor hype train, all that stuff. There was some bad blood there, and perhaps Conor got to him a little bit. This time, there's no trash talk, there's no bad blood. There seems to be a lot of mutual respect. There's none of that. Do you like that better for Dustin, knowing his personality? Is it better when it's less, I'm going to go in there and take this guy head off and let's just go out there and fight?
I'm not certain. I don't know if it matters or not.
Mm.
Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm not sure if that's truly a factor. Um, I've seen Dustin mad and angry and pissed and knock guys out in a minute. I've seen it all. So I don't know if that's always a factor or not. But I like where he's at mentally. I think he's very confident. He believes in himself, and I don't think that um, whatever that's going to come at him, I don't think he hasn't seen it before. It's nothing he hasn't seen before. I think that he's prepared for everything, and I think he's confident and feeling good inside his head.
Historically, traditionally, they both fight southpaw, right? Um, as a coach, could you explain to the layman the challenges of preparing for another southpaw? Like, do you like southpaw versus southpaw? Would you prefer southpaw versus orthodox? How does that differ in terms of the fight and the
Well, I mean,
preparation for
it's
the fight?
all the the angles change completely, and it's really all the attacks that work are completely different usually. Like it's a whole different set of attacks that you're going to use against the southpaw. And some people are really good at fighting in that closed stance matchup. Some people are the opposite and like the open stance matchup. Usually, especially if you're Jim, if you don't have a lot of southpaws and you're only used to sparring orthodox fighters, it's dramatically different, and it can cause problems. Doesn't always. Sometimes being a southpaw doesn't necessarily make you better, but it makes your opponent worse.
Mm.
If you're not used to seeing it, it can be a problem. But I think Dustin um, is very comfortable with southpaws, and he has a lot of weapons that he can use against them. And I think it's a good thing for Dustin, and I think he has a lot of things that he can use and will use.
Uh, Dustin was saying he's looking forward to a war. Connor said, 60 seconds or less, but he would invite a war. He also said a war to me might be something different to him. In your heart, how long do you think this fight goes?
I mean that who knows? It's really hard to predict. But what I think Dustin can win it um, anyway. I think Dustin has the ability to submit him. I think he has the ability to knock him out, or he has the ability to win a decision. And
Okay.
I don't think Connor can do all that. I don't think Connor can beat him in all those ways.
the knock on Conor in the past has been his cardio, right? Would you prefer, if this goes into the championship rounds, to test that? Because that hasn't happened often. Obviously, it happened with Diaz the second time, but people, people say that he gassed out against Diaz the first time. So would you like to test that cardio?
I mean, of course, he has shown a weakness in conditioning. That's I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as the actual preparation for the fight goes, I'm just curious, did you even watch the first fight, or was it just so long ago that it's not even, I mean, I know it wasn't the longest fight of all time, but is that even something that you watched because it was so long ago?
I mean, of course you watch it, but it's a small piece of all the fights. It's looking for patterns and especially more recent patterns. Breaking them down, putting it together, and seeing what he does consistently over more than once or over and over, that we can predict what he'll do in this fight and train for that. Of course we do that, but sometimes you can't also be hung up on what they're going to do. It's we worry about what Dustin's going to do, and have our opponent adapt to us. Of course we got to watch out for the things he's doing, but yes, that was a long time ago, but it's not something we didn't look at, but we don't want to put a whole lot of energy into it. They're both different fighters now, and we we're looking at the last few years. We're looking at stuff that he does consistently, and yeah, that's it.
So they will fight at around 10 a.m. local time. Could you tell us what you guys are going to do as far as the sleep schedule is concerned? Because it's obviously like, are you staying on American time zone for this one? Because it's basically being catered to us here.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what. I mean, I wouldn't say we're sleeping on the uh, same time as you're sleeping, but he's getting up so many hours before he leaves to the event that he's going to feel comfortable.
Okay.
So he's getting a good 8-9 hours sleep, and leaving himself the window that where he feels best, where he feels this is the amount of time I want to be awake before I go to battle, and he's on schedule already. So I'm glad we came out when we did. Everything is kind of falling into place. His sleeping pattern's perfect, and he'll be up and ready to go, and up long enough to where he's comfortable and nourished and fueled and ready to walk out the door and be at his best.
Okay. The last time we saw him was in June. Incredible fight against Dan Hooker. Second round to me was the round of the year. I don't know how was standing at the end of that round. The onslaught towards the end was just phenomenal. Hooker told me he hated the fight. Like, he thought he fought terribly. I know that, you probably don't want to get into a war like that. Those are the kind of fights that can take years off your career. How did you feel about Dustin's performance in that fight?
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't his best performance either. I mean, he didn't fight particularly well. I mean, he yeah, I don't think he fought well either, honestly. Um, but he's the type of guy. One sec here. Sorry.
No problem.
He's the type of guy that thrives in those situations, that when it is a really tough fight in a battle, and it's bloody and a mess, and both guys are in pain, he's the guy that usually comes out on top in that type of situation. So that's also why I think you hear him talk about stuff like that, because he knows that he's going to win those battles. He also has the ability to knock a guy out in 30 seconds. There's no doubt about that. He hits really hard, both hands, kicks hard with both legs. He's definitely a KO artist, but he has the ability to do that, and that's what happened. Would I want to be down 2 rounds and have to come back and win 3 to take out Hooker? Hell no, that's terrible. But he has that ability, and I mean, for some reason, every time he fights, he's in a fight of the night, fight of the week, fight of the year type fight candidate. This is whether it's Hooker, whether it's Gaethje, whether it's Max, Eddie. Every one of them is amazing, right? This guy's, I mean, and he's been doing it forever, all the way back to like Korean Zombie. right?
Mhm.
This guy, this is how he fights. This is what's in him. That's why people love to watch him. He's one of the most exciting guys in the sport, if not the most.
That fight was in the smaller cage, this in the bigger. Do you care? Do you have a preference?
I mean, it
Does
doesn't
it matter?
matter,
Is this just something that we talk about and you guys don't really like? I mean, I don't even know if you guys have a big versus smaller cage at
And
ATT.
then, I mean, it can be no that can matter if your plan is like if you're a wrestler and it's you really want to get it to the ground, that
Yeah,
would matter.
right.
But I mean, Dustin can do it all. He doesn't have to take it to the ground. He's a very well-rounded mixed martial art guy. So I think that the cage isn't too big of a deal. He can stand up. He can take it. I don't think the cage is going to matter.
Okay. How's his hair looking, by the way?
Hair's looking great.
It's
Perfect.
good. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect part. Perfect comb. Not a hair out of place.
Okay. I
Very
love
good.
when he asked you about the hair. That was amazing. And by the way, speaking of, that 1 minute in between rounds, can there's two other things I wanted to ask you about because I value your opinion greatly and you're one of the best minds in this sport. Why don't we, and this, I bring this up only because it just happened, but I know there's a fraternity. I don't want you to necessarily criticize them, but I will say when I was watching the main event this past Saturday between Calvin Kattar and Max Holloway, fourth, fifth round, I was wondering, like, why don't they stop the fight? It looks like he's taking too much damage. I don't mean Herb Dean, I mean the corner. This isn't a part of our sport, the culture. It's very
Mhm.
rare to see fights stopped in between rounds by the corner. We've seen it a couple times, and even in boxing, we saw Deontay Wilder fire his cornerman for doing that against Tyson Fury. Why do you feel like this is such a taboo thing? Why is it so difficult for this to happen when it's clear that the fight is not going to be turned around? Have you found yourself to be in that position where maybe deep down you want to, but your fighter will be upset at you? Why, like, take us into that struggle, because I'm sure it's something that happens constantly.
I mean, if I thought my guy, you know, didn't have a chance to win, or it was just so minuscule that it's time to throw in the towel, then I would. But I don't know with Cater, man. I think he. I heard the commentary say it. He was taking a lot of damage, but he did look like he had a shot at winning that fight. Like he was landing some heavy shots still late. Like I don't know what the right call is, but he was backed up and taking a lot of shots, covering up, and then he would like throw a bomb out of nowhere, and some of them were connecting. Sometimes he would throw like a crazy heavy elbow that would just miss. That like I was thinking Max has got to be careful here. Max could get hit and hurt with one of these shots, and he did get hit with a few of them. But he's probably, like as they say, he's got one of the best chins in the game. Maybe a lesser fighter, would have been rocked or went down. Uh, I think, I think Calvin was still alive in that fight and still dangerous. Yes, he did take a lot of damage, and um, maybe stopping it, wouldn't have been a bad thing. But I don't, I understand why his corner, still let him fight, because he did look like he was still alive in there and really fighting for victory. And I still think he had a chance at victory.
Along those lines, I don't know if you saw this story last week. I know you're obviously very busy, but did you happen to see the MMAfighting.com story about Spencer Fisher?
Yes.
A hard story to read, and the video was obviously hard to watch as well. Um, when you see something as a former fighter and now as a coach, when you see something like that, how, I guess it's one thing for me to read it and have opinion on it, but like as someone who is in the trenches, when you see that one of the, a legend of this game, right? Spencer has been in so many great fights. What is your reaction when you see that?
I mean, I don't think it's one fight. I
Yeah,
think, I mean, I don't know. I'm also not a doctor or,
sure, sure.
you know, or a neuroscientist of any kind. I, but I think this is cumulative damage over years, right? I mean, it's scary. It's part of the sport. I mean, it's very scary. But I think this is damage that's done over years and years, years of sparring, years of training. This is fighting in, you know, guys have had like boxing fights, kickboxing fights, tough man contests. This is repetitive trauma over years. It can happen, I think, overnight, but I think a lot of it, right, is repetition. I mean, there are people that get CTE from playing soccer, from heading the soccer ball, over and over and over, which is crazy. You do anything enough times, it's going to do damage. So that's kind of my take. I think it's probably more about the cumulative damage.
Sure. Well, Max brought up that he didn't even spar for this fight, and he did that the last time as well. Didn't spar. How do you feel about that? Would you be okay with a fighter of yours not sparring at all going into a big fight?
I think sparring is a very useful tool. I don't think it's 100% necessary. Obviously, if that's what Max is doing, it's working.
Yeah.
I do think there's a trend of not sparring as hard, and people aren't trying to kill each other like they used to. You can learn and develop without trying to hurt each other, going 100%. I think a lot of that comes from like the boxing model or the boxing blueprint, right? And it works. You'll definitely get better, but there's a cost. Most boxing gyms, you when you spar, you try to hurt the guy or put him down if you can, and then back off. But you look at the Muay Thai, Thailand tradition. They spar very light. It's more technical and touch and develop technique, and then use full power only in the fight, right? And this works, right? This works. I think both will work, but light sparring, not being malicious, not trying to hurt one another in the sparring, I think you can still develop to become a world champion.
Two last quick ones, if I can, about a non-Dustin Poirier story or stories. Your prize pupil, Kayla Harrison, fighting at 145. You like her at 145? You think she can keep doing this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. She's not really a 55 pounder. I think she's just fighting there because that's what they have at the PFL. She's definitely a 145 pounder.
Okay, so that wasn't too tough, or at least not as bad as you thought it was going to be. Okay.
No. This was easy for her.
Okay, that would be exciting. And just curious, it looks like we're headed in the direction of Masvidal versus Covington. Considering your previous relationship with Colby, how would you feel about that? Would that be awkward for you, or are you just going to be there for Jorge and corner him in that fight?
Yeah. It's of course it's weird. The whole thing is weird. That it's a shame that how it all went down. It's a shame that we're here in this spot. And of course I'm with Jorge.
Okay. Are you a prediction? You're not really a prediction guy, right? You won't
No.
I
don't like
to
do
that. All right, just curious. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Mike. And again, congrats, ATT on fire. You guys are doing such great things. We just talked about, a handful of them, but Joanna, there's just so many. So congrats to you and the team on a great year. Hopefully things go well for you guys on Saturday. And of course, in 2021, it's always great to catch up with you. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Ariel. Appreciate it. We'll see you.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.